Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode with me, Jessie from b.a.r.e Flower Farm. Today, I wanted to talk about a topic that a lot of new cut flower farmers are unsure as to whether or not they should pursue, and that is, should they actually get an LLC for their business? Do they need an EIN number? And what kind of insurance, if anything, should they be considering for their cut flower farm? So before I talk any further, just want to make sure that you're aware that I am not giving any professional advice. If you are looking for professional advice, I would suggest reaching out either to a lawyer or to an accountant, both of whom can even help you fill out LLC forms if you wish. So topic number one, should I form an LLC? And the question is, to what extent are you looking to operate this as a true business versus a hobby business? And I'm going to say that it's not just about how much revenue you're going to bring in. It's also about how much expenses you'll have. Because remember, businesses can write off expenses and those are tax deductible. So if you're running at a loss, then you kind of get a tax break at the end of the year. But for me, I think that I always like to err on the side of caution, and I would rather apply for an LLC. It's very nominal in terms of cost and time. It literally took me about 10 minutes to fill out the forms online, and I think it was $125 for the formation of it. Although every year I will have to pay a fee to renew it annually, at the end of the day, you're talking about a couple of $100 for protection. So what do I mean by protection? Now, you might think about cut flower farming as not a high risk liability type of work, but think about all of the things that could happen. You do have some flower species that are poisonous. So digitalis, for example. What if a kid accidentally eats a part of flower and something happens? What if someone is allergic to something like Dusty Miller and the customer doesn't realize it and something happens? So that kind of stuff does open you up to a whole suite of potential lawsuits. And then we haven't even talked about the liability side in terms of, like, let's say you take on a part-time employee, something happens, right? Like, we'll get a bit into insurance later, but the point is that when you have an LLC, you are protecting your personal assets in case if you were to ever get sued. So if you have an LLC, really what they can take away from you is all the assets that belong to the company. But if you didn't have an LLC, then things that you have from your checkings account to your 401k to your house could all be on the line. Now, there are different types of LLCs out there, but if you are a new cut flower farmer and you're really the only employee, the single member LLC is the best type of LLC for you. And it is exactly what it sounds like. It's one person, a single member, owning the LLC. And the beauty of this LLC is that from a tax perspective, you're technically not recognized as a business entity. So that means that you are reporting your cut flower farm's income as well as expenses on your personal tax returns. It's really not complicated to do. If accounting is what's keeping you up at night and determining whether or not you should set up an LLC, I don't think that should weigh at all in your decision. If you do set up an LLC, what you do want to do is set up a separate bank account and a separate credit card for your business. And what this allows you to do is it allows you to keep your personal finances away from your business finances, because in a single member LLC, it is really easy to muddy those waters. And you want to keep those expenses as separate as possible, because there are instances where people use their personal credit card or whatever it is to finance business expenses. Something happens and then they are still held liable. So the LLC doesn't necessarily always protect you from the liability perspective if you're a single member and you're blurring those lines. So just make sure that you're keeping everything separate.
Let's briefly go through the steps of filing for an LLC. It's a really straightforward and simple process. I think that you can do it by yourself. And every state has their own website where you can file for the LLC. So what you could do is you can just type in Google, apply for LLC in New Jersey, which is where I live, right? So you would put your state. And in this case, it should show you like a State Department website. So after all of the ads, the first one is the state of New Jersey. But I'm actually going to click on this one. So the online business entity filing here. And once I click on this page, you can see that there's a whole section dedicated to starting a business. And there's honestly a lot of resources on here already that tell you what you need when you're filing for an LLC. But basically, if you just click Get Started, it will take you right to this form and you can say, what do you want to form? So in this case, I had written that I wanted a domestic limited liability company, LLC. Let's just call this Cut Flower Farm. For purposes of our example, you click continue. Business designator, LLC. This is kind of more how do you say it, more aesthetics more so than anything else. But you can see like it's pretty easy, right? So I am going to talk about an employer identification number next. But once you have all this and you go through the steps, you can see there's only 4 tabs here for New Jersey. It took me less than 10 minutes to fill this out and I had an LLC.
We have some light, decided not to work in a dungeon anymore. Anyway, let's talk about the EIN, which is topic number 2. Do I need an employer identification number or an EIN? And for single member LLC, you actually do not need an EIN by law, but I would encourage you to sign up for an EIN. It is completely free and you sign up on the IRS. So typically the EIN, you can think of it as kind of a social security number for your business. The reason why I like using it is because if I do not have an EIN for my LLC, then I have to use my personal social security number. And, you know, I'm very dubious now about giving that number out, even if it is for legal purposes of an LLC. It's just one extra way for someone to potentially hack and steal my identity, right? So I just like keeping everything that's business separate from my personal life. And when I sign up for, let's say, a farmer's market and they need an EIN, like I can give them my EIN instead of my social security number. There are a lot of places that actually ask for an EIN, believe it or not. And I think it's just easier to have and it's free to register. So why wouldn't you register for one? Now, if you're signing up for a multi-member LLC, you will have to register for an EIN. That is not a choice that you have. And we are going to go through the steps of registering for an EIN, but typically you actually get your EIN first and then you register for your LLC.
Let's talk about how to register for an EIN, and it's super easy and straightforward. So in Google, just type in EIN IRS and it'll bring you to irs.gov and you click on this one, apply for an EIN online. It does take you to a landing page where it wants to make sure that you know your eligibility and understanding the online application process. So I would read through this in detail, but I'm going to try to fly through this right now. So you press begin application, and this is where you start filling out your information. So as I said before, you're going to want to obtain your EIN first before you apply for an LLC. So it's asking you, what are you looking to apply for? Well, in this case, a limited liability company. It is defining what that is for you here, just to make sure you know. How many members? We're going to say 1 here. What is the state territory you're going to be in? I live in New Jersey. Keep on going forward. And now it's showing me that this would be a single member LLC. So again, you know, pretty important to read through this stuff if you're unfamiliar. And then why are you requesting an EIN? Well, it's because I'm starting a new business. And then you start getting into the authentication section. So I'm not going to fill this out, but one thing to note is that you do have to enter your social security number here. So they need a way to authenticate that you are a real person. And basically after this, you add in your addresses, couple of details, and it gives you a EIN confirmation number right on the spot. So you'll have an EIN immediately to go to file your LLC. And then the IRS will also send an email to you with the documentation of the EIN information.
I know that it feels intimidating sometimes to register for an LLC. It feels like it's a lot of paperwork, it's a lot of processes, but as you can see here, it's really not. I mean, at the end of the day, like I said, the application process is really, really short. On an ongoing basis, there are probably things that you do need to take care of. So for example, quarterly taxes, meaning that at the end of every quarter, you do have to report taxes and pay them to your state. The second thing is an annual report, which you will get both an email as well as a letter in the mail saying that you have to renew and basically pay a fee to keep your LLC. But outside of those two things, it's really not a big deal. And I think that the benefits are well worth going through the trouble of putting in the paperwork for an LLC. Now, this is a lot of information, so I'm actually going to keep the insurance piece to part 2. And in part 2, I'm also going to talk about some of the credit card companies as well as bank accounts out there that I think are a little bit more conducive to a smaller business versus the traditional banks that you would think about. So stay tuned for part 2. And if you found this video helpful, please consider giving us a like and subscribe. It really helps our channel. Thank you.